Welcome back to the Tech Stop. Today we're going to be discussing IT tools and pieces of equipment that you can have to make your life much easier. Now, we're not just talking about computers specifically. However, the first and majority of the tools I'll be talking about help make your daily life working on computers and technology much better. And towards the end, I'm going to show you some more of the datacom side of things, because when you're working in IT, it's good to be able to have flexibility and be able to do things such as terminating cables, because you can show that to a possible employer and it gives you more value. Plus, if you're just working on computers in offices, sometimes you'll find that some of those things are incorrectly set up, so you'll have to go ahead and redo those things. And even with camera systems, you'll need to pull your own cable. Let's go ahead and dive into the first item, which is probably the most important, and that is your computer. I personally don't take a full-size laptop around anymore because I rarely used it. Most of the stuff that I do when I'm actually pulling data off a hard drive or something like that, I am doing that back here at my own office where I have my computer and my own dock and things. But the device I use away is a version of this, or either an iPad. I have a Microsoft Surface. Now this is the first gen, the RT, and it runs Windows RT still. However, the functionality of it is definitely capable for what I need it for, and it definitely will get the job done. It runs all my office programs, Outlook, runs the program I need to schedule everything, and does connect to my 4G service. And it does have a USB port to where if I need to plug a hard drive in, I've done that on several occasions, but I prefer to do it here. Let's go ahead and dive in on the basic tools that you will need. So first up, we have a precision screwdriver set, and this one just happens to be a Cobalt. There are several other brands out there that will just do the same. This is just the one that I've had for the past 7 years or so, and it has been a very good tool set for me. It has a case with a really nice fastener on it. And the screwdriver has a forward and reverse and lock function on it, as well as a 4-inch extension to get down into the harder to reach places, maybe inside of a PC case or something like that. It has Torx, flathead, and Phillips options, so usually anything that you'll run into with a laptop or most devices in general you'll be able to find in this kit. The only thing is it may not be good for large equipment applications, just because it is a precision set. Most of the bits are really small and you don't want to use the incorrect size screwdriver. I don't always carry this though, so we're going to go ahead and move this aside and show you the next option. This is the Klein 4-in-1 electronic screwdriver. It's been in some of my previous videos. It's a very nice screwdriver, and I use it for almost every laptop that I work on here. It's just the easiest screwdriver to go to, and it has two sizes of both Phillips and flathead, and then a single nut driver, single size nut driver on each side. Those individual bits just flip around like that, and you have the small and the big side. The screwdriver on the back has a spinning handle grip, kind of, so that if you hold it, you can hold it in your hand and the screwdriver will spin around while this is resting in your palm. Now lastly, the screwdriver that I kind of showed is what I have in my pocket most times. If I'm not taking any tools anywhere, I usually have this in my pocket. And this is not sold anymore, but you can find a similar option pretty much wherever you go. This is the Craftsman model multi-screwdriver from, I think it was around the 90s, early 2000s. And it's a very interesting tool. You can take off this little guard, and you have two flathead and two Phillips bits in there. But the most interesting part is probably the screwdriver itself. It's almost like a small version of all their other screwdrivers they had, but it has the 1/4-inch head on it, the 1/4-inch hex shank interior of the socket right there. So I can put it on your normal size desktop case screws, and it'll act as a nut driver. Plus it'll hold any normal size bit that I throw at it. Just for that functionality, I have two more holes for any bits, like a number 1 or number 2 square, or maybe even like a Torx if I know I will need it, that I can throw in there to store that, and it'll pretty much be solid for any application that I throw it at. Next up, we have a couple more vital hand tools, if you will, that make the job much easier. We have a small cheap pair of Pittsburgh side snips, and you may just use that for zip ties or something of the like. And you also have a small pair of needle nose pliers. You won't be using these too much, and that's the only reason I threw them in there, is because you might find an occasional situation where it is useful, maybe to get down in a hard to reach spot, but usually I prefer to use something like tweezers. but this would definitely be useful for cutting any zip ties that you have. Next we have your Esd Wrist Band. And static can build up in the human body, and most people don't understand, how important it can actually be. And it is very rare that something is damaged by ESD, but those cases still do happen. So the best thing you can do is just be prepared and ground yourself. And if you don't have one of these bands, you can still ground yourself by touching on a metal, exposed metal object, usually on the case. But the best thing to do is to have this band right here, which will go on your wrist. It's a metal contact to your wrist. And then you have this plug right here. And there's also an alligator clip option that clips onto here, or this can just go into a ground port of an outlet that you have nearby. That would just connect you to your house's ground, which is like a grounding rod or past the meter. At some point it hits ground. This is definitely a cheap object. I got this one for around $3 or $4 on Amazon, so you don't have to spend too much money on a wristband that you may or may not use often. One of the most important things when you're working on computers is the data that is on the computers. So in order to get any of that data that may be on an old computer off, you're going to need some type of device similar to this one right here. This is the Thermaltake Black X hard drive dock. It takes both 2.5 and 3.5 inch SATA drives, that is hard disk drives or solid state drives. I've used them for both. The good thing about this is it's a very sturdy tool, but the negative is that it has to take DC in and USB. That may have been blurry for you to see, but basically you're not going to have as much mobility with this tool as with some other options that I'm about to show you in a second. You have the eSATA or just the normal USB 2.0 options. So data transfer can be relatively slow, but usually for a hard drive, you get about the best speed that you can possible. And most of the drives I put on here are drives that are about to fail, slower drives, older drives. So speed is not too big of a concern as long as I get the data off. This honestly isn't as used as much as my other option I'm about to show you next, just because of the task of setting it up. It takes about 5 minutes to set up because you have to get your power and your USB, and if they're all right together, then it might be a quick option, but I usually have to go find those two cables and put everything together because I don't leave this plugged in all the time. The next option will only work with laptop drives or solid state drives, but it definitely makes your life easier. Here is the Startek USB 3.0 to SATA connector. This, like I said, only works because of how much power it can put out. It only works with USB hard drives, 2.5 inch hard drives or solid state drives. It will not power a full-size drive. This runs $10 versus where the dock runs about $50 when I purchased it. You can get a good one from anywhere between $35 to $50. And this on Amazon is currently like $9.99. And it is as simple as what I said. You plug it into your hard drive using these SATA ports right here, and plug that into your USB 3 or 2 port. If you plug it into an old standard USB port, you're going to experience very, very slow transfer times, even if you may not even see the drive at all due to compatibility issues. So in most cases, you're going to be using either a 2.0 or a 3.0 port for this device right here, and transfer speeds are not all that great. However, with solid state drives, they perform pretty well, and with USB hard drive, 2.5 inch hard drives, they do pretty well as well. May take some time in order to get permissions to get into the drive, if you know what I'm talking about there. Whenever you plug a hard drive in and you try to access user-specific files, there's about a 5 to 10 minute period where you're trying to get permission to actually access the folders, and it's a little bit slower on this versus the hard drive dock. Let me show you some other tools. One thing I almost forgot is when you are getting that data off, you're going to need to have a place to put it, or just a place to store your personal files for fixing computers, or even your operating systems. And that's where these two cases right here come in handy for me. Now, this is going to be a little bit of an overkill situation, and I'm just going to show you what's inside the case on the right. And basically, these are flash drive cases, and they have been around, as far as I've used them, for at least 10 years, so they've gotten a little bit dirty. And you can see that Case Logic even underwent a logo change that you can see since I've had these. Let me go ahead and show you what's in the one on the right, because that also houses my external hard drive. These have held up very well, and in the back I have a USB 3.0 cable. That is just to plug into my external hard drive. And I have right here a Toshiba 500 gig slim drive and I have the terabyte variant as well as a WD terabyte external hard drive in other locations right now. And here are just some of my flash drives. In the other case, I have even more flash drives that have my operating systems on it and bigger flash drives, and these are the ones that I've had for a very long time. Usually they are not over 16 gigs. Like this one's a 4, this one's a 16, that's a 4, that's a 4, that's an 8. 2 more 4s, a 16, and another 8. So not too large flash drives, but different programs and things that are on them, and I most likely wouldn't even use the 4s anymore. This right here is a kit that I have shown in a previous video, although it does not have too much popularity on the channel. This right here is just what I use for mobile phone and laptop repair. Before I get into this though, I just want to show off this screwdriver, which is well known on the channel. This is the Klein Tools 11-in-1 multi-screwdriver. And this is definitely a good thing to have in your pocket whenever you're working on anything networking or like a desktop computer. If you're working on any rack equipment or inside of a desktop computer, this is definitely a handy tool to have due to its 11 different options you have for tools. Inside this box right here, we have things that are going to help us specifically with phones and Apple devices. And just one more thing that I forgot to mention as well, definitely have yourself a good flash drive like this Corsair Stealth right here. I keep that on my person whenever I go out anywhere. That is just so that I have any important documents, files, programs, or anything I may use in the troubleshooting process. I don't want to show up to someone and not have what I need and have to leave and then come back. Here's that Klein screwdriver again, and this is usually where it stays. And in here, I'm not going to go into too much detail. You can find the video that has everything here, but these are basically just cheap pentalobe and proprietary screwdrivers for Apple devices and laptops. And then this is my tool row. The roll right here has all these different tools in it, and you can get this for about, I think it was 30 bucks that I bought this kit for, and the screwdrivers are fair quality. I wouldn't rely on them solely, but the pry tools are specifically what I got them for. It has definitely some very good tools in here. Here are just some other random items that I usually have in my possession or just in the bottom of a toolkit, because you never know what you're going to be doing. This right here is just a piece of heat shrink, and I usually have a few tubes of these just because I have seen in some cases where a wire in a computer was damaged, maybe in a fan or something like that. So I've seen a CPU fan, the wire got tangled up in a case fan, and it pulled the CPU fan out, which eventually shut down the computer, so everything was safe, but it frayed the wire. So instead of just putting some electrical tape over it, I put a proper piece of wire in place instead of the one that got frayed up, and soldered it together and used a little bit of heat shrink to make it look more professional and clean, and to protect it some as well. This right here is a power supply tester for ATX power supplies. This is a really old version of it, and basically you just use your 20-pin side of your power supply connector and it will light up green. This is kind of a pointless tool to have, really. It does put a slight load on the power supply to tell you. However, the best way to do that is to troubleshoot with another power supply or something of that sort. This is just a standard desktop wireless mouse by Logitech, and you never know if someone's going to have a mouse that is hard for you to use, and I run into a lot of laptops where the mouse is really awful to use, or even a trackpad that you don't like. So if you have your own mouse, then that helps you not have that annoyance of something like that. This right here is a 3/16 nut driver. This came in a computer kit I got a long time ago, and this is great for standoffs. So that is the exact size of a standoff, and it helps you loosen and tighten those and move those around so that you don't have to use the usually crappy adapter that comes with standoffs that just fits over the standoffs and gives you a Phillips adapter. This is just a standard Sata cable, usually for troubleshooting purposes. This is a little bit older, and it came in a Dell, but I just keep that with me because you never know if you need to have one. If I need to put one in someone's system and I don't have one, then I have to go buy one from a store, which is most likely going to be very overpriced just for a convenience fee. This right here is just a standard roll-up RJ11 end telephone cable. It just retracts out on both sides and goes back in. It was from the Dollar Tree about 10 years ago, so not the best shape, not the best quality or anything like that, but it definitely works in a pinch and won't get tangled up like a normal telephone cable. And lastly, for this group of tools, we have a Rj45 coupler for like an Ethernet cable. This definitely has saved me in a few cases, and I don't know what it's necessarily rated for. However, I have put Cat 6 in there as a coupler and did achieve close to gigabit speeds for it, so it does not provide a source of too much loss. Maybe if you put a few of them in line, it would show some results due to leakage, but that is so far has been a really good device for me. Next up, I'm going to show you some more of the datacom side of tools that I might have in a small kit if I was working in IT, just because you never know what you're going to run into. And these are also pretty cheap. None of the tools go over $50. So all the tools that you're about to see, if you have tuned into my channel for long, you probably have already seen every single one of these items. However, adding them all up, they might range around $300, $250, but individually, none of them are over $50, except for possibly the Tonin probe. The first thing up is going to be that Tonin probe. It's the Southwire T200K, and it's definitely cheaper than the Fluke. It may not have some of the functions that the Fluke has, but it definitely gets the job done in a pinch. You have your toner and your probe, or they may be backwards sitting in the case, but it stores all of your different options for hookups right in the back. Very neat tool to have. Runs $45 to $50 at Lowe's. Next up, we have the, I always think that you should have a Sharpie, especially if you're doing any cabling. And this one just happens to be a Milwaukee brand Sharpie that was like 50 cents at the Home Depot. Something like that. It was cheap. This is the Klein Tools. These are all kind of in the same series of tools, so I'll go ahead and show them all together. But these have been in several videos in the past and are all, decent tools. That's the Klein Tools LAN Explorer. Definitely decent. It doesn't show you all the details of the Pro, or can't remember what the exact model number is or the name of that Klein Tools, but I know this is the LAN Explorer, and there's also the LAN Scout Junior and the LAN Scout. This right here is just your standard Ethernet stripper, Coax stripper. I do have the Ethernet one too that has the blue tip in there, but that one is designed for RJ59 and RJ6. This right here is just a coax cable mapper. It lets you know if it's open, if it's a short, or if it does have connection with the cap, the color cap that's on it. And then to the right, we just have your standard compression tool that is only for RJ6. It does not have adjustable dies in that, so you cannot change it out for like BNC or RCA connectors. Last couple of things that you should have is just a really solid razor knife. It doesn't matter if you're not doing cabling at all. This knife is like $7 or $8, and it's a really good build quality, and you'll be using it for opening boxes or different types of equipment. I've used them for so many different things when it comes to computers. And this right here is just your standard 8P8C connector or a 6P connector, so it will do either one of those connectors in here. This has just been used a lot. However, you can get a cheap one like this for around $15. But I urge you, as far as the coax compression tool goes, please get a compression tool and not the cheaper crimple and set. I have one right here that is made by Ideal and still sold today. But usually you have results that vary with something like that. It's not anywhere close to as good or as stable as the compression ones, which are on there solid, and if you don't do these 100% correct, you will end up regretting that you did it, and they will just fall off or cause a very bad connection in the line. So here is everything that I showed in this video today. Now, it is probably good to know that you don't need everything that is listed in the description or that is in this video in order to be in IT. You can get along with plenty of these things not being in the picture at all. So one of the more expensive areas that I could say you could probably avoid if you're just starting out is any of the datacom things. It might just be worthwhile to get your Rj45 crimper up there. That's around $15, but as far as these tools over here, you can make do without a tester or a compression tool, this tester right here, or even this stripper right here. If you need to use a razor blade, it'll take some practice and watching some other videos, but it can be done. And the crimp tool also is definitely, I wouldn't buy that. Anyway, I did not know better at this period of time I bought this, about 10 years ago as well. You will need a Sharpie, and I would recommend you get an Esd band, but one of these kits is pretty cheap. You can use whatever computer that you do have, and I'm sure that you probably have some of these other tools that are down here below. You can start off with a cheaper dock or just one of these $10 cables right here, and build your tools up as you go. Now, over time I've developed probably several versions of each of these tools and different equipment that is probably far more unnecessary than is absolutely needed, but it just makes the job much easier. If you really are interested in this stuff, you could probably get all this right here for around $500 and definitely be set for a long time. To get started though, you really only have to invest about $100 in some good tools and you should be on your way. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in another video.